So Mr. Arsenault here is doing a little experiment. He wants to combine two different solutions of different saturation of sulfuric acid, and he wants to combine them in such a way that he gets a concentration that is in between these two extremes. So the two that he's using, the first one is a 30% solution of sulfuric acid, and the other one is a 50%. And he wants to make one that is 42%, and he wants to make 10 liters of that. So what I've drawn here is just a little diagram to help us picture what's going on. He's basically taking some of the sulfuric acid from here and some of the sulfuric acid from here, combining them together, mixing them together, and creating a solution that is 42%. So the question is, how much of this one and how much of this one does he need so that he can make 10 liters of this one here? And we're going to assume that he's taking liters from here and liters from here. So the x and y obviously indicate to us our variables. And that's what I'm going to begin by defining. I'm going to say let x represent in liters, okay, in liters, the amount of sulfuric acid, or the amount of 30% sulfuric acid, of 30% sulfuric acid, and the y will represent the amount of 50% sulfuric acid. So copy, paste this here. And instead of 30, I'm going to have 50. So 50%, and that is my y value. So those are our variables. And the simple equation to set up between the two of them is, well, if I add the x and y together, I know that in the end I want to have 10 liters. So x and y added together is 10. Now in terms of the concentrations, well, I have 30% sulfuric acid, X amount, whatever that is, and I have 50% sulfuric acid, Y amount, whatever that is, and I want to make a concentration of 42% sulfuric acid, but in this case, I know the amount. I want to make 10 liters, which once the math is done, I get 420. So those are my two equations. It's time to solve, and Mr. Arsenault thinks that, again, substitution is probably the best bet because this equation here is with coefficients of 1 in front of the x and y. And we're going to isolate for y. We're going to let y equal 10 minus x and substitute it into equation number 2. So what do I get? I'm going to have still my 30x plus, instead of 50y, I'm going to have 50 times 10 minus x, and that equals 420. The 50 comes inside the brackets, and I get 30x plus 500 minus 50x, and that equals 420. Rearranging the terms, this 30, this 50, I'm going to combine them together to give me negative 20. 420 minus 500 is negative 80. Divide both sides by negative 20. Divide both sides by negative 20. And I end up with x equaling 4. In other words, going back to the big picture here, Mr. Arsenault is going to need 4 liters of the 30% sulfuric acid. Again, x represents the number of liters he needs of the 30% one. So the leftover is obviously 6. I mean, you can do it in your head or just plug it into the equation over here, because 10 minus 4 gives you 6. So Arsenault needs 6 liters of the 50%. He needs 4 liters of the 30%. Combining them together, he can make 42% sulfuric acid, and he's going to have 10 liters worth.